Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to our International Women's Day panel and a program announcement. My name is Trish Dill. I'm the director of the corporate training team and the cyber range at the Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst. I would like to begin by acknowledging the land on which the Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst is headquartered in the city of Brampton, the region of Peel. This land is part of the treaty land and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. Indigenous peoples inhabited and cared for this land for thousands of years and continue to do so today. In particular, we acknowledge the territory of the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Ojibwe Chippewa peoples, the land that is home to the Métis, and most recently, the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who are direct descendants of the Mississaugas of the Credit. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land and by doing so, give our respect to its first inhabitants. On behalf of the Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst at Toronto Metropolitan University, I welcome all of you joining us today. Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst is TMU's National Center for Innovation and Collaboration in Cybersecurity. Founded in 2018, we are grateful for our founding partners' commitment to us, Rogers Communications, the Royal Bank of Canada, the Government of Canada, and the City of Brampton. Through our diversity-focused training and certification programs, unique commercial accelerator, first of its kind cyber range, wide-ranging public education programs, and influential policy development platform. The Catalyst empowers Canadians and Canadian businesses to seize the opportunities and tackle the challenges of cybersecurity. In just a few minutes, we're going to hear a special announcement regarding the Mastercard and the Mastercard Emerging Leaders in Cyber initiative. It's a program that we kicked off last year. It focuses on enhancing the leadership skills of women in cybersecurity for non-binary and women leaders. The program is made possible through the generosity of Mastercard Canada. Canada continues to face a critical shortage of skilled women inside the cybersecurity sector. Women and non-binary individuals are essential to mitigating this gap, but they continue to be underrepresented in the sector. The Mastercard Emerging Leaders in Cyber initiative was designed to broaden the perspectives of leaders from all parts of the organization, to broaden the lens of cybersecurity with the recognition that everyone, from the legal department to human resources, needs to understand the challenge and opportunity in cyber. I want to take a moment to welcome Sasha Krstic, President of Mastercard Canada. She'll be delivering some remarks today. We are so grateful that Mastercard is continuing their support of the Catalyst and the ELCI program. The announcement will be followed by a panel discussion, a seat at the table, the many paths of women leaders in cybersecurity. This topic is very fitting as we approach International Women's Day, a day devoted to celebrating women's achievements, to raise awareness about discrimination and take action to drive gender parity. Our panel of accomplished women is made up of Anne-Marie Kelly from Mastercard Canada and Momna Farouk from Bell Canada. Unfortunately, our other panel, Cheryl Hayes, co-founder of Cyber Legends, has laryngitis and she's had to step out. They'll each discuss their unique career paths and the importance of women at the leadership table. But now, I'd like for all of you to hear from our special guest, Sasha Krstic, Mastercard Canada President.
Hello, I'm Sasha Krstic, President of Mastercard Canada. It is a pleasure to welcome you to today's International Women's Day panel hosted by Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst at Toronto Metropolitan University. Last year, we launched our partnership with Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst to create the Mastercard Emerging Leaders in Cyber initiative, a unique leadership program for women and non-binary leaders to shape the future of Canadian cybersecurity. The inaugural Emerging Leaders cohort launched last October, consisting of 30 amazing women, including one of Mastercard's very own, who you will have the pleasure of hearing from in today's panel. I am thrilled to announce today that Mastercard Canada and Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst are continuing our partnership to launch a second cohort of emerging leaders this year. We know that diverse voices are necessary to build a stronger, more secure digital economy for all Canadians. At Mastercard Canada, we are committed to supporting Canadian talent through education, training, and research with community partners like the Catalyst to ensure a diverse and inclusive future workforce. Thank you to Toronto Metropolitan University and Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst for your partnership on this important initiative. I look forward to continuing our work together and to building the cybersecurity leaders of tomorrow.
Thank you, Sasha, for your continued support and funding of the Emerging Leaders in Cyber initiative. Investing in and building a robust and diverse talent pipeline is critical. Canada's global cybersecurity competitiveness depends on it. A program such as ELCI that increases diverse women's representation and leadership is key to advancing Canada's cyber posture. With more women in these roles, there's a greater opportunity to bring a gender lens to the decisions and policies that impact the system. We are grateful for your leadership, Sasha, and the partnership with Mastercard Canada in supporting ELCI's continued development. After that exciting announcement, and I'm personally thrilled to be able to meet 30 new wonderful women next year, let's move to our panel discussion. We have a group of women leaders whose contribution to the cybersecurity ecosystem will help lead the way for other women and non-binary leaders to find their place in the sector. Moderating our panel, a seat at the table, the many paths of women in leadership, is Sandeep Sandhu, Vice President, Cybersecurity, Rogers Communication, and an ELCI Board Advisory Member. Sandeep leads the Rogers Cybersecurity Risk and Vulnerability Practice with over 20 years of extensive leadership experience in information and technology risk, cybersecurity transformation and governance, security operations, and cloud technologies. Sandeep is a strong advocate for building leaders that drive a culture of security and establish capabilities that shape Rogers' diverse product offerings to its customers and Canadians. Sandeep is passionate about empowering leaders and reflect the communities they serve, promoting a culture of innovative thinking and building diverse and inclusive high-performing teams. And if that wasn't enough, she's also co-chair for the Rogers Technology Inclusion and Diversity Committee, where she is responsible for strategic initiatives to increase representation of current and future talent pipelines within technology. Personally, I think Sandeep is a rock star, and I thank her so much for her contribution and commitment to the ELCI program. Sandeep, over to you.
Thanks, Trish, for that really great introduction. I appreciate it. Thank you to the entire TMU Catalyst team for organizing this and consistently amplifying the voices of women in cyber. And thank you to all of you for taking the time to join remotely today to be a part of this great conversation of how we get women in cyber at the table. We have lots of ground to cover today, so let's get started by introducing our esteemed guests. Anne-Marie Kelly is the Vice President of Identity Services, Cyber and Intelligence at Mastercard. She brings over 25 years of global experience in identity risk management, which includes specializing in fraud management, regulatory compliance, digital identity trends, and mitigating identity cyber crimes. Anne-Marie is also part of the first cohort of leaders participating in the Mastercard Emerging Leaders Cyber Initiative. Welcome, Anne-Marie. We also have Momna Farouk with us today. She is a system security analyst at Bell Canada, where she focuses on third-party risk management, provides project teams with security requirements and technical guidance while delivering executive reporting on security assurance. Momna is also a graduate and a former valedictorian of the first women's cohort of Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst training program. Welcome to the table today, Momna. Thank you to both for being here with us today. We have some great topics to cover in celebration of International Women's Day, so let's get started. Anne-Marie and Momna, today we're talking about women in cybersecurity and how they get a seat at the table. The question is, can you tell us about your career journeys? How did you get to where you are today? Anne Marie, I'll start with you.
Thanks, Sandeep. I got to tell everybody that, first of all, thank you for having me here, and certainly with both of you on this most important day that we're celebrating actually tomorrow as well. So thanks so much. My career in identity risk didn't start out in identity risk, actually. So I graduated with a communication studies degree and wanted actually to be in media relations. And so cybersecurity wasn't even on the radar. However, I do come from a pedigree of law enforcement officers in my family. And so there was always a part of me that was very interested in the criminal aspect of their jobs. I guess, my uncle had said to me when I graduated university, rather than going into media relations, that I was forbidden to be a police officer back then. And so, good luck to me. I was working for one of the major financial institutions as I was going through school, and learning a lot about, I would say, sort of low-level fraud at the time. So empty envelopes, for those of you who may remember, and probably most of you don't, but lower-level type of fraud. And then I went to a smaller online or virtual bank, and it was really was where I pivoted my career. They were faced with, I would say, air quotes, their first fraud. And really, I leaned into that and took an opportunity to have a discussion with then the CEO of this bank at that time, and just said, let me build out an investigative services team. And so I know later we'll talk about mentors and people in our lives, but he really was the one who said, yes, go. Realizing that I didn't have a lot of experience in fraud management and fraud detection. I was also very fortunate to have a staff sergeant of our local police department take me under his wing and tell me sort of the ropes of what it means to be an investigator. Certainly not at the law enforcement level, but certainly from a business level. I think, from there, like I said, that was pivotal to my career because I spent 17 years building out an investigation services team. But I think just as importantly, that's really where I started to establish my network. And my network were primarily, law enforcement officers sitting around the table at the Canadian Bankers Association. And I was very intentional about my participation at those monthly meetings. So intentional, actually, knowing that I was a young, not a former law enforcement officer, didn't come from a financial risk or a cyber risk background. My participation in these meetings were very intentional. And so much so that I got nicknamed Casper. And the reason for that was because I sat around as the only young female around about 30 men around the table that were in their discipline for a very long time. And my intentional behaviors and my participation in these meetings were such as this. I would be, come in 1 minute before the meeting, and as soon as the meeting adjourned, I was out. And the reason for that is because not only one, I was building up my network, but I also was building up the trust of members in the room and building out who were going to be my future colleagues in my network. I think sort of fast forward from there, I was with that institution for a long time, and then I transitioned over into the vendor world, into a global information company, and there moved into identity fraud products. And so built up my network and moved, I guess, to the other side, from financial services on the customer side to the vendor side. From there, again, continued to tweak on my network, and you'll hear me talk about this quite often in this talk about the importance of networking and building your network. But I continued that journey as well for 9 years there, and then joined Mastercard in the last year or so. And the reason, my primary reason for joining Mastercard is because of their immense global presence, their participation and their delivery to diversity and inclusion. And also, more along the lines of my profession, from day one, I would say that we do foster at Mastercard that world of diversity and inclusion. And so this program actually, again, as an extension of my network, is how I came to be here. So that in a 3-minute or 4-minute discussion is how I got to this place.
That's fantastic. 25 years in 3 minutes, but I love the way that it's a non-conventional, non-linear path to where you're at today. And I love how you are telling us about leveraging your community, building that network to support you along the way. Momna, what about yourself? How did you get here?
Great story. I can resonate with a lot of things that Anne-Marie said, all about the non-linear paths, and I love hearing all these stories, and I think there's great value in that. My path was very different. When I was looking to study, I was come from a traditional South Asian family, and my career and education was the traditional doctor, engineer. I didn't want to be a doctor, so I compromised with my parents and I said I would go into radiation therapy, so cancer treatment. I studied, I got licensed, and then I never worked in that field. I love healthcare, I love biology, I love making an impact with patients. And helping make the world a better place, but it just worked out that I didn't work in that field. I tried a few things, tried teaching, tried banking for a little bit, and eventually fell into a non-technical path with working in IT, project management, business analysis, and just really that's where my interest in cyber started a few years ago. And it was more so working with really smart and intelligent and creative people that were, the experts on certain technologies. And I was always curious and understanding, what they're working on and understanding how it makes an impact. So I started doing a lot of self-learning and, exploring what options, and I levitated towards security. And the reason for that was because it sounded very technical, but also very different than the traditional IT world. And there were, I would say, during my career in there, there were many times where when I was brave enough to express my interest in security, there was the positive impact where, oh, that's great that you're learning about this and you're learning. But there were oftentimes those voices, but you're not a technical person, I don't recommend that for you. And honestly, it's the negative feedback like that really has driven me quite a few times. Like, what do you mean I can't do it? So let me show you. And that's really led me to just explore and understand technology. And I don't necessarily say that the negative should drive you, but in my case that did, and I think it worked out in my favor. So fast forward to around January 2020, I came across the first cohort, the applications for the accelerated cybersecurity training program here. I applied. I thought I could make it. I went through the whole interview process, and this was right at peak pandemic around March 2020 when everything was just shutting down. Had my virtual interviews, and then I got waitlisted. Uh-oh. Okay. All right. Maybe cyber's not for me. Maybe I'm not ready for it yet. So at that time, I had just moved back to Canada. I was just trying to figure out where to start my career again. And that little voice was coming back again. And it was saying, maybe cyber really isn't for you. Try something else. But I thought about it. I worked a survival job trying to get myself going. And then when the next cohort applications opened, I actually applied and I got in. And that was the first women's only cohort in October 2020. A wonderful opportunity. I applied again, got in, and then it was just way over my head because this program was very, very intense. Nothing like what I expected it to be. I thought I knew technology. I thought I knew some level of security information, but it was a lot. But, with the support of the staff at the Accelerated Cybersecurity Training Program, my cohort mates, we pushed through, and this was peak pandemic, school shutting down, homeschooling, losing loved ones, all sorts of challenges we were faced with. It was a very different time, and it's I can't believe it's been about 3 years almost since this. But going through that and just learning, the importance of grit and believing in yourself and powering through. I did that. And then after the program finished, I was lucky enough to have multiple opportunities open up in terms of job offers. I ended up choosing Deloitte, and I worked in Deloitte for some time. And that gave me a great opportunity to learn different things in cyber very, very quickly, working in different industries, different clients, different type of projects. And I quickly learned that I liked the business side of cybersecurity, but also with my new technical skill set, focusing mostly in the governance, risk, and compliance area. Learned a lot very quickly, but then also leveraged my previous career skills, all that project management skill of translating technical information into non-technical and vice versa. And, getting stakeholders engaged and keeping projects going really helped me. And now I'm at Bell, and I work in many different fields, as you mentioned in my intro. And I love it because every day is a challenge and every day is different. And I'm really grateful for all the things that I'm learning. And I'm also additionally teaching right now. And I'm a really big advocate for getting more women in cyber, especially because I've been on that side not too long ago where you're told you don't fit in cyber, you don't necessarily have everything you need, but I'm here to tell you that's not the case. And yeah, that's a little bit of background about me.
I couldn't agree more. You absolutely fit in cybersecurity, and I loved your story in terms of just, there's nothing like the motivation to prove people wrong that you can't do it. So it absolutely works in your favor, and many of us have kind of gone through that in our career. And I love that in your story you're talking about bravery and persistence, because that's fundamental attributes that all of us need if we want to be successful in this field. So that's fantastic that you're doing so much to advocate for more women like you to join the field. And you are making a difference in cybersecurity, just like you would have done if you were in radiology. So much more than you probably even realize. So I'm going to kind of go into the next question. Loma, I'll start with you because you kind of touched on it a little bit, your experience with the Catalyst program, because both of you have participated in incredible programs with TMU. Can you tell me, in your experience, why do you think a program like the Catalyst is so critical for the future of women in cyber?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, there is a huge power in community, and the Accelerated Cybersecurity Training Program, especially the staff, are truly invested in your success, and it shows, and they're with you through every step of the way. And when you're making such a major life decision move, it's great to have the family and loved ones and friends support. Oh, you're studying? Okay, great. I won't bother you. But really, no one understands what you're going through, like your cohort mates. All the things that come up and the challenges. It's like, oh, you're just studying. It's okay. It's not a big deal. But really, there's so much more involved. This is such a diverse field. There is so much to learn, and the learning really never stops. And that support that the community and programs like this create, and the ecosystems that it's created even within my own life, all of my cohort mates are just a phone call away, and I do keep in touch with them and constantly. And it's not just on a professional level, like, hey, I'm having this work issue. I don't necessarily know certain XYZ technology. Have you experienced with it? Not only that, but then also just career advice and where to go next, and just learning from each other. I wouldn't have had that had I not been part of this program. And that community, I would say, the staff helps, but it's also in you as well. So I do believe in creating that community, keeping that network going. As Anne-Marie mentioned, that network is everything for you. And you do have to invest the time to develop that, to keep in touch with folks, to give back when you can, and just be connected. And having that collaborative and knowledge sharing base is definitely, there's a space for it. And these programs really do support that and help that grow.
Well, thanks, Momina. And Marie, what's your opinion on the Emerging Leaders Cyber Initiative? How do you think it's critical for the future of women in cybersecurity?
I think, this program unto itself, so Trish mentioned earlier that there's 30 plus of us in this cohort. And, we in this cohort, we come from all areas of business. We're at different levels of our careers. There's different sectors that are represented. And so I think the importance of this program is to raise the level that cybersecurity just is not only about the technical aspects of it. It's not just, as marketing or the media, actually, I think more importantly, portrays cyber technology as somebody in a hoodie pounding on a keyboard trying to figure out pen testing or that type of thing. There's so much more about cybersecurity beyond, the important part of the technical side. But these ladies in this cohort have really proved to me that, there are, human resources involved, there is law enforcement, there are telecommunications, there are different areas of, protection and businesses out there that offer solutions and services for pre and post a cyber incident. What I've learned in this cohort also is, it's full circle. It's like speed dating in a couple of months, right? Where we're learning about Business 101, we're learning about critical infrastructure, we're learning about identifying what are the crown jewels to an organization. We're also learning a little bit about the technical aspect, but also what's happening in our world. So every time we get together, we talk about current events. And I can honestly say that, prior to this experience, current events to me in cyber, I was disassociated with it. If it didn't have anything to do with identity crime specifically, I wasn't really paying attention to the ransomwares and the cyber. And that's bad on me. And so, this program has taught to be in the now, has taught me about, again, scaling and, continuing to have the diversity in my network. And again, one of the aspects of this program as well is mentorship. And again, we'll talk a little bit about that, where, again, not only were we, availed Business 101 and all of the things that I had talked about earlier, but we were each given a coach, right? And so it doesn't matter what point in your career you're at, having that sense of community, having that trust, and, in your network becomes critically important. I think just in some of the readings that I've done, studies have shown in particular that women have distinct and unique physiological reactions to crisis and to stress. And when I think of a cyber incident, I mean, talk about crisis and stress. And so again, learning from this cohort of professionals, what are their coping mechanisms for stress and for crisis? And it doesn't have to be around a cyber event, but how we as women take on stress and how we react to crisis is also a very important component of this program that we're in. I think the most important thing that I've learned in the experiences about this program is, we celebrate every time we're together, whether it's in person or whether it's virtually. We celebrate each other. We celebrate milestones in our personal lives and our business lives. And we celebrate collective successes as well. And that becomes critically important, again, I would say, to any female, wherever you are in your career. But I think, coming back to this program, it really does give that sense of community and that sense of safety in an area that traditionally women don't play a big role in, or traditionally haven't played a big role. I think, just to throw another stat, Another stat that I had read recently is that, 25% of the, workforce globally, 25% of the global workforce in cyber is made of women. So 25% globally, that's not a huge number. And again, so it's programs like this that bring awareness to not only the participants, but also in sectors, and that resonates with, decision makers, right, of where females can be utilized very well in, non-traditional sectors like cyber.
I couldn't agree more. I think some of the programs that you are both in are differentiators because they take cyber and make it a business risk and a business problem for all of us to solve. And these programs are that we can see in you generating leaders that are solving the future business problems in different sectors. And it's incredibly a multidisciplinary field, which allows a lot of opportunity for many folks to join with the field. So some of the next questions I have, Mona, this one's for you. There are many people that might be watching today that aren't quite sure if they have what it takes to have a career in cybersecurity, just like you had at some of the doubts that you mentioned earlier on. What advice would you give to them if they're thinking about starting a career in cyber?
Absolutely. That's a great question. I'll break it down into two main things. One is just start. If you have even a small interest in cyber, just start. And I would start by just reaching out. Now we have great platforms like LinkedIn. Reach out. Talk to the women in the field that are actually doing the job. So that small percentage of 25% of women that are in the cybersecurity industry, I guarantee you we're all doing such diverse things. And that's going back to what Anne-Marie said, that, it's not the hoodie hacker. That's not all there is to cybersecurity. There's data security, there's network, there's web application. There's so much involved within cybersecurity, and it's just that lack of awareness. And I think that is a great space to start by just going out. Hey, do you have 10 minutes for a coffee chat? I'd just like to know what you do as your role. And honestly, it sounds like an easy ask, but a lot of us are afraid to even take that first step because it's like, oh, I don't want to waste this person's time. I don't want to sound like, I don't know what I'm talking about. No, there is, just cut that out is essentially what I would say, because I've been in those shoes and it's like, oh, I can't ask this. I need to go and research and I need to be the expert in there. And that comes back to that negative self-talk and just keeping in mind of those biases. And I honestly catch myself being in the field for a few years now. I catch myself with my biases and I tell myself, it's like, oh, I'm not going to apply for that role, or I'm not going to take on that project because I'm not the expert in that technology, or I can't do that. And honestly, you just always constantly have to check yourself and say, okay, I don't know this yet, but this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go reach out, maybe talk to someone else in the industry that is doing this job. If you will reach out to maybe 10 people, maybe 3 of them will apply. Really, and it's not, everyone genuinely does want to help. It's just maybe they don't have the capacity, but you have to ask, and usually you will get that response. That's one aspect. And then the other thing is, security is such a diverse domain and there's so much change constantly happening. The beauty of it is no one knows. No one's a jack of all trades. No one is the expert. Everyone is just making mistakes and learning and constantly evolving. So you're never too far behind is what I would say. So don't let that intimidation get in the way. And you absolutely do have value to offer, especially if you're coming from another career, if you have been on a long career break or you're looking to shift into cyber, your skills in your current role will definitely have a role to play in cybersecurity roles. And it's just getting to talk to people in the industry, and they could help fill in and make those connections for you. That your project management experience, my healthcare experience was a huge part of my projects at Deloitte, because I was working with healthcare clients and I understand the issues that healthcare industry is facing, and how you can have an impact from a cyber perspective. Absolutely, that connection is there. So those are the two things that I would say.
Yeah, and I think those are great pieces of advice, because often it's our own self-limiting beliefs that stop us from doing some of the things that we absolutely can do. And we never tend to overstate our skill set, so go for it, reach out and ask for help. I think that's absolutely fantastic. And I would also agree with you that knowing your skill set and understanding how transferable they are is something that's invaluable in cyber. And if you can communicate and practice saying it, like we just said, it gives you that confidence to keep going. So that was great advice, Mama. Anne-Marie, the next one's for you. We both know you cannot excel in this field alone. And you kind of mentioned this, that in your journey, you've had significant mentorship, sponsorship. How has that played a critical part of your career?
Thanks for asking. I also, just to fall back a little bit and add a sentence or two to what Mona and you yourself had said. I love, Mona, that you said just start, right? I had in my notes, like, just say yes. And, we don't always understand or need to have that critical path of what's going to lead us to the next when we may not know what the next is. And sometimes, by saying no or being not sure, a little bit insecure about diving into something that you don't totally know and jumping out of your comfort zone will lead you, I'm sure, to great paths and great people. I mean, certainly both Mona and I have described how we got here, and it's because we said yes. And so just to leave everybody with that. Mentorship. I'm a huge believer in coaches and advocates for, especially young women, but really anybody. Pardon me, like you said, Sandeep, we can't do this alone. And, mentors or life coaches even, pardon me, advocates are folks, in my experience, who speak up for you when you're not in the room and, provide the art of the possible to you and help you along journeys, being a sounding board, role playing, certain discussions that you're having within your network or with your upline, or even if you have direct reports, with your direct reports. People that are in mentorship relationships, they, in my opinion, have a pretty important role to play in career development. And so I mentor a few young women, and as I had mentioned, I also have a mentor through this program and had one in addition to this program as well. And oftentimes in my personal experience, I will just bounce ideas. I will role play before I'm having really critical discussions, or I'm having meetings or presentations, that type of thing. Because mentors really are detached from the everyday, from the emotion, but they're invested, right? And I think that being able to separate the emotion from the actual, what's the value that you're bringing back to the business, a mentor is able to clear the air for you and just help you have, in my cases anyway, separate the emotion from the business. And so mentors provide a critical ability for young women, especially, to ask questions and be vulnerable. One of the things as a leader that, I pride myself in, and, folks who have reported to me in the past and are now is, or, even my family, right? Be vulnerable. I'll say to my two daughters, just be vulnerable. Because I think that is important. And a mentor absolutely allows you to be vulnerable in a safe environment, but also have an advocate in areas that you're not in and you're not able to be in. And also, I think even, I don't know that it's even more important or just as important, is mentors oftentimes, in my personal experiences, help broaden your network. Even a mentor that I have right now is, just through simple discussions of a particular presentation that I was giving, my mentor was, I need to introduce you to this person, that person, and that person who really have, alignment as I traditionally think about in my discipline or in my space. But it is, these folks that I'm being introduced to, again, are new to the network, to my personal network, and to my brand, actually. So mentors, I think, are critically important at every stage of your career. And what I mean by that is you can be new in your career, you could be changing careers, you could be at the highest of the high of your career. And I firmly believe that we all benefit from having somebody who's detached from situations, but yet invested in situations, maybe in different ways, and definitely in you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I loved how you touched on the fact that you can have all sorts of mentors and relationships that guide you through your career, right? Because they can be people that just validate your experience, or a sounding board, or they provide you counsel or advice, like you mentioned. And there's different relationships, right? Mentors versus advisors and sponsors, and they change throughout your career. I would say some of the best advice I got once was always ask your sponsor or your mentor or your coach or advisor, who do I connect with next? And that allows them to extend the network that you spoke of. So that was fantastic. Thanks, Anne-Marie. Momna, this one's is for you. And the theme of International Women's Day is Embrace Equity. The campaign theme sets out that equal opportunities aren't always enough. Can you share in your experience, what were some of the barriers that you experienced, either entering or whether you're in the field? And then most importantly, how did you overcome them?
There's a few things, actually. I think one of them is just the ability to, like, on a personal level, it's me advocating for myself. If I'm not making those efforts of actually asking for what I want or what I'm interested in, and now that I'm on the other side, sometimes helping mentor other women that are looking to transition into cyber, I see that quite often, that we're not asking for what we want, and then we're disappointed when it doesn't happen. It's like, oh, I didn't know that manager position was up. I would have loved to be a part of that. Why was I not considered? Well, did you voice it? Did you advocate for yourself? Did you reach out and ask for what you want? I think that is one thing that we do. But then on the other side, in organizations especially, the opportunities and the channels for mentorship and championing, especially women, within cybersecurity industry are very, very limited. There's always, there are great initiatives and efforts going on overall in the industry, but I would say that we're right at the beginning of it, and there's a long way to go. And leaders like yourself are part of that, but there is genuinely space for more. And I think we can only do that when the folks that are looking to rise up are actually voicing those, like, hey, I would really like a mentor. Do you have someone I can connect with? And really holding your leadership accountable, whether it's your direct manager or higher up or wherever, but being vocal about that will help that. And I think that's a barrier that was there for me when I started, but I've slowly learned that, okay, ask for what I want. If you put it out there, you'll likely get something back. And if not, you will get your answer of what you need to do. Be that change, be that change that you want to see. And think about, when you started your career in cyber, what is it that you wish you had? And how can you make sure others in the industry are able to have that? So, and that's only through that whole networking, community building, and mentoring. So those are some things, but I also would say that you have to hold yourself accountable and do the work to get yourself break those barriers, essentially.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You got to speak up and ask for what you want. And sometimes it's easier than said, but that's a habit we have to all build. And I love how you mentioned that you got to kind of be your own architect of your own career. You are the accountable person to see where you want to take it. And there's all sorts of folks, and I'm sure Anne-Marie could even say the same in terms of where you kind of lean in and get support. And mentors and sponsors all comes in many shapes and sizes, right? So they may not all look like us today, but some of the, and maybe Anne-Marie can say the same thing, some of the best mentors and sponsors I've had in my career were cisgendered white men who were the most incredible allies and sponsors to get me to where I am today. So I would absolutely agree, speak up. So fantastic. Anne-Marie, over to you. Just wanted to ask you, we touched on this a little bit throughout, but we need to build more diverse and inclusive cybersecurity sector, right? And that's why some of these programs that both of you are part of kind of really are amplifying that. What do you think are the benefits to organizations for adopting this approach for building these types of teams? What's your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think, diversity, right? Diverse workforces. I think, earlier on I had mentioned that cybersecurity is more than just the traditional technical behind the scenes looking at code and IT, for lack of a better. You can tell that I'm not IT focused. So I think, what is the benefit? Absolute having diversity as far as where people shine and where they do their best work. And that may be at a keyboard, that may be through, assessing threats external to your organization and what's coming, maybe facing. It may be, how do we keep the lights on? How do we keep our employees engaged? I think that, it goes it's inclusive of cyber, but even it goes beyond cyber, right? And building teams that have diverse, experiences, knowledge, that all feed into cyber. And I think that is my biggest aha out of, the ELCI, and what I've learned, here is, again, the diversity of the women in this cohort and the experiences that we bring are so different, but so in tune. And I think organizations, looking beyond the traditional job description and bringing people into their teams that have that different experience, non-traditional experience, we can start to look at cyber, or continue to look at cyber and cyber crime and cyber protection through different lenses. Understanding, as I was mentioning before, understanding cross-sector, how organizations, whether your own organization or others, are really fine-tuning their cyber protocols, really, again, brings us to the forefront of how to manage what is all before us. We're not in libraries looking through encyclopedias anymore to get our information. And, so I think that it benefits all of us. I also think, pairing and collaborating between, private, public, academia, having all levels of government at the table, law enforcement, really, again, is critically important for building that network of cyber risks, I guess, if you will. And so again, there comes that D word, right? The diversity, and bringing different assets, different knowledge, different experiences to the table, certainly, benefits workplaces across sectors.
Yeah, I would agree. Strategic partnerships and collaboration is what's going to get us through the next generation of cybersecurity threats. So you're right on the money there. Last but certainly not least, we have the final kind of question for our two panelists today. We started today's session with the announcement of the continuation of the Mastercard Emerging Leaders Cyber Initiative. Fantastic news, and it really reinforces that we need more leaders in this field. As we close today's conversation, I'm curious, what kind of leaders do you want to see in this field? And in your leadership journeys, what has inspired to keep you going? Anne-Marie, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think it gets back to, what do we need as leaders? I'm going to do a little bit of self-reflection here on what I want to be when I grow up, and what I am, what I think I am now, but what I live and what I try to teach, I guess, if you will, not just necessarily people who have a direct reporting line to me, but anybody, again, that's in my network, is, a couple of things. Number one, be cognizant of emotion versus, connecting back to the business goals, right? And so I made a quick mention to that earlier in the discussion. Again, be deliberate and intentional about your behaviors and where you're driving your path. As a leader, be deliberate and intentional on the actions that you, that you propose, that you actually do, that you lead. And, again, I said the V word, right? Vulnerable. Being vulnerable for me has enabled trust to be established very, very quickly, and admitting vulnerability as well. And I think, having great leaders, or again, if I look in the mirror, I try to enable people around me to be their best self. And if I can help that in any way through networks, through sitting down and listening, moment for a coffee or whatever that looks like, people at their best self are going to thrive. They're going to be happy to show up. And so if I can influence that by demonstrating that is the leader that I think that I am and that I want to be when I grow up. And then I think finally, I think that I lead my professional life and my personal life with, these 6 words. And basically we have, one life, one chance, no regrets. And I live that in my professional life as well. And being transparent, being vulnerable, making choices, saying yes, taking risks where I don't know what it's going to be at the other end is, again, a sign that I try to, or ways that I try to lead and influence people around me. My greatest reward in people that are around me, that is when they say they are loyal to me. And loyal doesn't mean that, in the sense of relationships loyalty, but they trust me. And trust is the foundation of, in my opinion, great leadership. So I'll leave you with that.
That's fantastic. I love your 6 words. I need to use that as well. And I agree with you. Any leadership is about trusting and inspiring, and it's certainly something you do, and we see in you. So thank you for that. Momna, final words with you. What kind of leader do you want to see, and what kind of keeps you going?
Yeah, great words that Anne-Marie shared. I know she already touched on it, but I think there is importance on just observing. Oftentimes you see leaders, especially new leaders that come in, they want to make that impact and deliver results. And that is definitely part of your role. But oftentimes there's so much value in just observing and listening and really understanding some of the challenges and the reason why, your team is where it is, or the issues that they're facing, to really understand it and take that time to see what challenges there are, how did it come to be, and not just maybe on a professional level, but on a personal level as well. Everyone's priorities are different. So really making that connection and taking that time, especially if you're a new leader, can have a huge impact. Like, I know as a leader, you often, have these plans. These are the initiatives. These are the changes I'm going to make. This is the action plan. These are the resources we need, tools, people, whatever the case may be. And these are the results that I will deliver. And that's great. You can only do that if you have that support, if you have that team and that trust that Anne-Marie mentioned within your team to create those results. So it's really important to have that observation and listening and really investing the time to do that. And the other thing I would say is the kind of leader I would like to be is having a lot of accountability and really understanding your responsibility as a leader and the impact you could have on your team or the folks around you. So when someone is asking for help, when someone is talking to you, really taking that with empathy and approaching that and really giving it the time that it deserves. And I try to do that. I'm not in senior leadership right now, but I try to do that. Every message that I get on LinkedIn, I do try my best to take the time and really understand, and not just, there's often times where you'll get that message or that request is just like, why are you asking me? But, just being cognizant, empathetic, it goes a long way, because that impact that you may have on that person that's reaching out to you could last a very, very long time. So that responsibility and ownership and accountability needs to be there all the time as a leader. I'll leave with that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Trust, inspired, be vulnerable and empathetic. those are power skills. And I think that's exactly what we need in the field of cybersecurity and digital risk and as we move forward. So thank you so much for your time today, ladies. It was an absolute pleasure to be a part of this conversation. I'm filled with hope that we have you here inspiring others in the future. So I'm super excited to see where your careers go from here. It has been a pleasure to be a part of the conversation and continue. Let's keep pushing more women and more marginalized groups joining our sector, because there's so much opportunity and potential to grow and thrive in this field. So thank you again for your time. Now I will hand it back to Trish for some closing remarks.
What a terrific discussion. Thank you, Sandeep, for moderating such an authentic and genuine conversation. Anne-Marie and Momna, thank you so much for sharing your insights and experiences. I'm sure that this audience is going to take away a few aha moments from the session and kind of reflect and take it back and consider it. And that's truly valuable. I want to also, of course, thank again Mastercard Canada, whose investment in the Catalyst is the reason that we can continue one of our great programs, the Emerging Leaders in Cyber Initiative. I think I've said that about 52 times today, but I am so thrilled to be part of the program. All of us at the Catalyst are thrilled to have a partner that is as dedicated as we are to open up the Canadian cybersecurity ecosystem to everybody. And thanks to all of you in attendance. We are so appreciative of the strong and vibrant community that is engaged with the Catalyst. I encourage you to discover more about the Mastercard Emerging Leaders in Cyber Initiative and all the services offered through the Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst at our website, which is cybersecuritycatalyst.ca. Thank you, everyone, and have a terrific day.